everyone, and welcome to China EVs and More, where my co-host, Lei Xing, and I will go over the week's most important and interesting news coming out of the China EV, AV, and mobility space. What Lei and I discuss today is based on our opinions and should not be taken as investment advice. For those that are new to the show, welcome. And to our loyal listeners, welcome back. We ask that you please help us get the word out to other enthusiasts about this podcast. And of course, tune in again next week. My name is Tu Lei. I'm the managing director at Li Auto Insights, a global management consultancy that helps organizations bring innovative and tech-focused products and services to the transportation and mobility sectors. I write a free weekly newsletter that we pull many of our discussion topics from. You can sign up for it at sinoautoinsights.com, which of course, I encourage you all to do. Lei, a power outaged Lei, can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, good morning. Welcome to a dark episode. This is your co-host Lei Xing, former chief editor of China Auto Review, and this is episode number 138. Speaking of dark, a dark period, would you say, for Tesla? Panic button?
I think it's a dark period or a darker period for EVs in general. In the US for sure. I think China, early 2024, we're going to see some tough sledding. iWays, WM, they're bankrupt. iWays is not bankrupt, so I take that back. They haven't officially. WM has denied it too, right? So
denied that they filed for bankruptcy. They said it was something else.
And is Freeman still in country, or is he just visiting another country?
It's a mystery. So no one knows for sure. I mean, he's fast becoming the
poster child,
the YT Jia of yeah. But
to be frank and honest, Freeman doesn't have that track record like YT does. So with YT, he kind of left Le TV, Le Echo, all in a lurch. And he's been in LA since, just chilling at this amazing home overlooking the Pacific Ocean. So
Tesla, I mean, I think the expectations were, after these rounds of price reduction, obviously we're going to see a drop. All the data that they've showed were pretty, whether it's earnings per share, whether it's margins, took a hit, right? In order to get that volume up. So I think the street saw it as kind of anytime you have these quarterly short-term view, then, right, stock dropped pretty big yesterday.
And Lei, indirectly, we now know why Berlin Giga hasn't ramped completely, because they were trying to keep Shanghai Giga at close to capacity, and they were exporting. And I think that's one of the reasons you don't see Berlin Giga churning out vehicles at close to capacity, because they'd rather keep Shanghai Giga going at a high rate. And with softness in demand, that was becoming more challenging, hence the price cuts. But to your point, all indications were pointing downward with pricing pressure, because the price war has not ended, has clearly not ended. We're still seeing new products, we're still seeing new brands, and we're still seeing reconciliations on strategy. And the China market for a Tesla has a lot to do with their weakness, in my opinion. So
yeah, and they just launched the new, the 3 and the Y, I believe.
So they had to have known that Highland revision of the 3 for the China market wasn't going to really move the needle that much. I think they were hopeful, but they're smart over there, not with the velocity of change that's been going on, Lei, for a better part of a year. Okay, so it's not like it's only been a couple of months and we're seeing a lot of changes into the market. This constant barrage could really put any great company on its heels, and Tesla is a case in point.
Yeah, but that that map of all the prices, starting prices of the Model Y in the U.S., right? You saw that, right? With federal and state subsidies. I mean, that, come to think of it, does cheap sell? I mean, the Model Y is one of the cheapest models in the US now, right? Not even talking about Model 3.
One of these guests might be getting a new car in December because of it. So,
and how obviously Tesla still, has what, more than 50% of 50 to 60% of the US market, but you would think that, this would be a big pull or draw. I mean, you being an example, but
well, the other side of that, Lei, is that there just aren't any real other products of significance at that price point, specifically in the US market. So we're seeing Ford pull back, we're seeing GM pull back on EV production, at least for a year. And that's because they're trying to sell these super expensive cars or EVs, trucks that no one can afford. And there's the challenge with charging infrastructure still. So we knew that it was going to be lumpy in the United States, but the battery cell importing and the Inflation Reduction Act, I think, has something to do with that, because there's a bit of uncertainty about whether or not these cars that they're building are going to get subsidies. Because again, the only game in town for affordable batteries is you know who. And so there needs to be clarity from the US government on what is in and what is out from the standpoint of the tax subsidy for the consumer, but also the production subsidy or the production credits that the automakers will get for building locally, right?
yeah, and right. So batteries. Speaking of batteries, Bill Ford's comment the other day on the Chinese coming to our home market should be our real competitor, or it's should be we should be going up against. While at the same time, Ford needs CATL.
Full stop.
So that
Full stop.
Yeah. So
There's no.
We need the Chinese, but while we're also confronting the Chinese.
And that's the
kind
and
of.
he's the first US CEO that's acknowledged that China EV Inc. is going to get a passport stamp for the US in the next 18, 20 months, I think.
Yeah. At least publicly, right? So
right, exactly.
I thought that was kind of a shock heard around the world, but not so much shocking to us.
The Ford guys have seen this coming because they're bleeding pretty heavily in China and don't have any real strategy for China to grow, hence pulling back. But they effectively only have two vehicles. And he said version 2 of the platform that they're building, and you saw that Kumar got promoted to COO.
Yeah.
And you know Kumar. Have you met him? You've talked to him?
No, not directly.
Okay.
No.
So Kumar was...
But he was in China for a while, right?
Yeah, he's head of PD for China, product development. And so I was told that Kumar is going to be managing like the operational side, not the planning side. Doug Field is still leading the software development and the planning of the EV stuff. And Bill Ford leaned into that platform that they're building, a la Ultium, because the Mach-E and the F-150 Lightning are one-offs. They're Band-Aids in order to get to this complete platform, hardware, software, integrated EV platform that all of the Ford future vehicles will be using. So
Right.
And then you and I had heard this week that Stellantis and someone else was supposed to ink a deal.
Yeah, the other one of the big three, yeah.
So, but...
Well, they did announce something with Dongfeng.
Yeah.
On the DPCA, which one sticking point was exporting the C5X. And by the way, the C5X is one of those models that's produced exclusively in China for the global markets. And you have a CEO that's all, against China, basically.
While his team is negotiating with Chinese companies. So it's interesting to note that they're looking at the EREV platform, not an EV platform. But I guess it's flexible enough for EVs too, but it's a EREV first platform. So...
Well, what they announced was the 3 points, right? They'll continue to produce the Citroën and the Peugeot models in China, putting the DPCA as a export hub, and then the NEV side of it is what will be interesting is whether they will in fact go ahead with the Leap motor pending official announcement and using that platform for their upcoming models for the DPCA, or have it in a different, I guess, entity. That'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I heard the deal was on the verge, but it has not blown up yet, so we could still hear something. But they can say they'll continue to produce quote unquote Citroën and Peugeot vehicles, but there's no real demand for them. And to remind everyone, when FCA and PSA merged, Stellantis became the fourth largest automaker in the world. And that's effectively without having any real sales, significant sales in China.
Yeah.
So I don't know how long they'll continue to be the fourth largest automaker with a China-sized hole in their portfolio.
Yeah.
But again, it creates all these interesting dynamics and strange bedfellows because Tavares is thumping his chest about how China EV Inc. entering Europe is going to gut the European domestic automaker sector while trying to ingratiate himself back into the China market with partnerships. So
Yeah, and also Dongfeng, I think, buying some assets of the DPCA, a couple of the plants, I believe.
Yeah.
And speaking of, right, we just heard Neil is trying to do something with the JAC to kind of have that as a standalone licensed manufacturing asset. Not sure what's going on there, but it looks like there's some activity.
And it should be noted that this week, the first electric Mini Cooper rolled off the line, and it's going to be a global car that is built in China.
Yeah.
So let that sink in. Another British brand that is primarily going to be manufactured in China and shipped to the world. So if we're keeping count, keeping score, it's MG, it's Lotus, and now it's Mini Cooper. So
yeah. And quite a few others, obviously.
Yeah. So that's going to continue. That's not going to end anytime soon because Mini Cooper, that's their strategy moving forward. It's not like they have this diverse manufacturing footprint outside of China. So, and I guess it's importantly to treat the UK separately from the EU. So we have to remember that too, due to Brexit. So let me ask you any notable tweets that you tweeted this week about any specific China stuff?
Just on, I think on the battery side, it's picking up. The pace is picking up. So the CATL Shenzhen was announcing one of the Chery's. I think it's called the Exceed Xlantics.
Yeah, it was weird. That's
yeah, it will be one of the first to adopt the Shenzhen battery, right? The super fast charging that CATL announced a couple of months ago. That's after Avatar, I think, was one of the first, and then right before they also announced with ArcFox. So there's 3 brands are now using this Shenzhen battery.
And ArcFox is kind of an also ran because their sales volume is not very significant.
Yeah. So, and that also I think had to deal with, this Huawei CATL triangle, which is also, the Avatar, Beiqi, and Cherry. I think, right? Cherry's come out with that new, I forgot the name.
Yeah, I forget too. Jigo or something like that.
Yeah, that's what the Huawei CATL inside.
Yeah.
That business model. And then while at the same time, Wuling, they had their tech day announcing their own hybrid system, their own Shenlian battery. I was like, and you see these companies, their own motors becoming more vertically integrated, moving to the PHEVs. They had that new Starlight Xinguang sedan, right? So these are fast moving, like these becoming more self-sufficient, right? Becoming more competitive on different technologies and trying to not depend, let's say, a Wuling depending on CATL. So this is a dynamic that's happening.
Remember that Wuling is a GM joint venture
Yeah.
brand. So
Yeah.
I think I will also bring up a couple of things that I think are very interesting, and I wanted to get your take. First of all, Chang'an announced that they're building a factory in Thailand. They're going to invest $240 or $50 million. So I think that's, and then I kind of had to think and step back for a second, Lei. There are like 3, 4, 5 brands that Chang'an has just launched within the last few years. And so I was like, whoa, Avatar, they have Citroën, right?
Tuan, yeah.
And I was like, I don't know which brand is going to be manufactured there. I don't know if it's multiple brands, but they're looking to build 100,000 units out of the factory in the next couple of years. So it's happening. Southeast Asia is an opportunity. I think Chang'an has really come up and been aggressive lately. The other announcement, Lei, is that NVIDIA and Foxconn had their tech day or EV day this week. And man, I forget his name now. Shoot, Foxconn CEO shared the stage with Jensen Huang. And they're leaning in and partnering on some AI stuff. And for those that are thinking that Foxconn does not want to build cars, they continue to say, we want to build for other people, but that door is closed. Yeah, that door is closed. There's nobody that is going to be super attractive to them.
Except their own.
Yeah. And I'd mentioned this because we talked Lordstown. We talked the 4 companies that they recruited, Fisker, Monarch, Lordstown, and Indy EV. Lordstown, Indy EV, bankrupt. Fisker, trying to raise capital. Monarch, don't know that much. They wanted to get 300,000 units by 2028 out of that factory. No way that's going to happen. The U.S. automakers are not going to be in play for Ohio because that is strong UAW country. And GM and Ford will not be partnering with Foxconn to build EVs because the unions would have a fit. So in order to get that type of volume, they would have to look towards Volvo, Hyundai, Mercedes, or BMW, who also build in the US but do not have union reps.
Yeah. Okay.
But again, I don't know how attractive that is because there's a ton of capacity in the US that just needs to be converted. So
it's funny you mentioned MPVs because the past week was pretty mega on that front.
你喜欢吗?
I said I loved it simply because it's a way to bring noise. It's a way to have people talking, and they have. So that worked. And Li Xiang, posted that this will be something having a pretty nice, a great CD. So I wonder, when you get into so basically 0.2 to 0.25, now that's pretty good for any car. So if they can get that thing between those numbers,
so
that'll have people talking.
Lei, you're getting too wonky. CD means drag coefficient.
Drag coefficient, yeah.
And that's extremely important for fuel economy, but even more important for range because the more the wind slows down a vehicle, the harder the electric motor needs to work.
It is the first BEV model from Li Auto.
I think it looks like so I tweeted this out. I said, I'll take a Li Auto Mega, but can you supersize it? Or I'll take a Prius, but can you supersize it? Because to me, it looks like a Prius. Like if you squint, right? Like it favors a Prius. It's just bigger. And it does look futuristic. I don't know what design language it carries over from the SUVs, but I'm assuming that the interior is very similar. But good for them. And I believe it's going to be built in Beijing at the old Hyundai factory, correct?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, the first BEV model. And they're claiming that to be going to be the best-selling 500,000 RMB model ever. Whatever, ICE, BEV, NEV.
So 500,000 RMB for everyone is about $80,000.
80,000, yeah, roughly $80,000.
So when we're back in Beijing for the auto show, I guess where we need to go visit, I guess, huh?
At the same time, Volvo is coming out with the disguised Zeekr 09,
Yeah.
basically, and just a bunch of MPVs all of a sudden.
And then BYD, thanks to Jiri and Car News China, is coming out with a pickup truck. Because, yeah, they had written an article about a BYD pickup truck. So, man, it is just so hard to keep up with everything that's going on. And this is not to mention that this week, the US government is trying to close all of the loopholes to the restrictions from Chinese companies to buy the highest end or highest speed AI chips from NVIDIA and the US companies, or companies more appropriately that use US IP to fab the chips. So, or US software to design the chips. And that's a pretty broad.
Oh, that means my power's back.
Nice, dude. Good for you.
Sorry.
Nice. It sounded like you're in a car, like opening a car.
No, printer. It's my printer.
Nice.
Sorry for the noise.
So no worries. But so not a day after that kind of revelation or announcement, the Chinese government talks about restricting graphite, which is a major component in battery modules and battery packs. So tit for tat.
Yeah, speaking of, so one big news that came out this week was the Belt and Road Forum, where she announced the removal of all restrictions on foreign investment access in the manufacturing sector. So this is after 2022 is the year when China lifted all requirements on foreign vehicle manufacturing, right? Joint venture requirements that you can. So I thought that was trying to say that we're open. We're more open, but at the same time, there's these restrictions going on.
Well, not only that, but there's also still a bit of controversy because executives are still getting blocked from leaving the country. So I think companies are fearful a little bit about investing still and sending executives. I think it's one of those go at your own risk kind of things. And specific industries are more at risk than others.
And then the other one that should be significant is also Xiaomi moving from their MIUI to HyperOS, which has great ramifications for their EV ecosystem going forward. And we'll see what happens there.
Yeah.
And Baidu World, I thought that was, I watched a little bit at the beginning when Robin used the Chang'an Qiyuan to do a few prompt and generating images and videos. Did Chang'an Qiyuan pay for that? Or but I think what's, aside from the Ernie Foundation, whatever, those are quite techy. I thought what was interesting was Jiyue basically put out an announcement saying that they're de-lidaring. So they're trying to move away from LiDARs with their own BEV transformer and the occupancy network to achieve high level of ADAS. And they showed that they're doing this in Shanghai already. Basically, PPA is almost like, Jiyue's own FSD.
Sure. We're starting to see a bit of divergence on strategies for ADAS and AI, because we'll also start to see a bit more bifurcation. You saw that announcement that Cruise, GM, and Honda are going to be launching an autonomous vehicle service in Japan. So I think that's a huge win for Cruise. And it means that the Chinese AV companies and the US AV companies are, again, looking to slice up the rest of the world to see where they can enter markets, foreign markets. And it'll likely end up being looking at the allied countries and doing that. So where the Middle Eastern countries are going to land is anyone's guess. So I think that'll be pretty cool. And GM and Honda are already working together. So this is just an extension of that, I think.
Yeah. I'm surprised that this Origin, they haven't done a better job of sensor integration with all these sticking out the corners. Aesthetically, I thought it could be better by now, but I guess.
Sounds like the GMs and Fords and the Stellantis are really, really trying to reconcile their strategy of yesterday to match the volatile environment of today with regards to the global EV and mobility space. Because, talking to a couple of startups in the battery space, I mean, my first question was, do you have risk management teams? These are startups, these are small companies. Most of them do not. And for those that don't know what each major company or conglomerate has, are risk management teams, and their entire job is to look at where the company has a presence, either a sales presence, a manufacturing presence, or an operational presence, what the risk of being in those markets is from a sales standpoint, from a manufacturing standpoint, from a supply standpoint. So the announcement from the Chinese government that they're going to restrict graphite, the risk management teams need to be all over that. They need to be looking at what the pricing is going to be. They need to look at where else they can get and how that exposes the company. And remember, these companies are publicly traded companies. So the expectation from the investor is that they have a plan for sourcing alternate location or supplier, non-Chinese. But if there's no capacity or if there's little supply, the price of graphite is going to increase significantly because it's going to be a mad dash from everybody who uses graphite to try to find suppliers. And so these risk management teams are extremely important. And then the other part is the corporate development team, Lei. They're probably looking at startups in the graphite space to see if they can invest in them, partner with them, acquire them, because maybe they want to transition out of graphite. And I know synthetic graphite is one of the areas of opportunity for startups. So,
Yeah. China controls what, over 90% of graphite supply? Or?
yeah. So 90% of refining. So graphite is just like a raw material that needs to be refined before it can be put into a consumer product. And so 90%, it's significant. And it's a rare earth metal race that now you can add graphite to lithium, nickel, and cobalt. So that's another reason why LFP is become so popular, because lithium phosphate batteries do not use nickel or cobalt. And so we should see in the next 10 years, Lei, a ton of emphasis and innovation out of the battery space due to these constraints. And the danger for China to be doing this is that, just like the danger for the US restricting chips, is that China is going to create and design and fab their own chips, and NVIDIA and Qualcomm and these companies will lose out on future revenue generation opportunities. But for China on the graphite side, because they have 90% of the supply and the refining, that if the United States decides that we're going to move away from sourcing from China, and they're forcing us to do that, we'll obviously domesticate it, and we'll never need that again from China. And so that could leave a lot of oversupply now in the Chinese market, which is a danger for them. So,
yeah, something's got to give.
Yeah, man. Always a little bit of politics, unfortunately, when there's talk between the China and US relationship. So, hey man, we are at 9:37. I know you have a hard stop. Do you have anything else, or should we open it up?
No, just a couple of other things. The price war continues with Zeekr announcing new incentives. Right, you saw that, right? 80,000 maximum for the 001, which brings it down below 300,000 RMB. And then I think BYD just announced something this morning. I saw a tweet of the Qin, I believe, some additional incentives. And that goes back to the earlier topic on Tesla, what they're facing in terms of pricing pressure.
Sure.
And a few interesting models that came out, right? The Geely Galaxy E8, which Chairman Eric Li commented on. They had that video of him driving, which is basically the cockpit is I think it's the same as the GA01 with the flush, the screen across the A
Right.
pillars and the yoke. And then the Hyper HT, the Model X like SUV, $30,000 starting price.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
And a legacy model, the new locally produced Mercedes long wheelbase E-Class is launching with 8295 chip. And it's one of the Mercedes first global models with more advanced levels of L2 plus. On these two things alone is because of China competition.
Oh, yeah.
That they have to have the right features, right? So
I don't know if Mercedes knows how to get.
it's not even an EV. It's not even an EV. It's just a new.
Smart and EV is normally associated with each other, but they don't need to be at all. And unfortunately, I don't think Mercedes knows how to get the most out of that ASIC or that chip. The last thing I'll talk about is, did you see that $700,000 Hongqi L5? Oh man, that's a monster car, and it's basically China's Rolls Royce. I don't know. I'd love to see it in real life. It is massive. It is almost 20 feet, I think. So it is like a limousine for sure.
Yeah, it's the flaunt, like.
And it's China only.
So your status, right? It's definitely a way to do that.
So, but
chauffeur.
We'll see how many government officials, how many government vehicles get purchased. So
remember in the summer I was visiting a Denza store and this kind of L5, the Hongqi L5 came. This guy stepped outside and came into the shop, and there was this whole commotion of people,
Yeah, right. So
yeah, Denza. So they delivered 100,000 units already.
So Denza is BYD's kind of SUV premium ish, just below the Fangchengbao brand. So it's BYD, Denza, Fangchengbao, and then Yangwang. That's the hierarchy of BYD brands. So yeah, man, that's all I had. I actually just got a text from my wife, and I need to go right now.
Okay.
So I don't.
Well, I have a hard stop. Also,
yeah. So
another mega week.
Yeah,
right?
We will not be able to take questions today, but thanks for listening, everyone, and we will talk with you all next week. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening.
Likewise, we'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
That brings us to the end of this week's show. Lei and I thank you for tuning in. My name is Tu Lei, and you can find me on Twitter at Sino Auto Insight. That's SinoAutoInsight. You can find Lei on Twitter at LeiXing77. That's LEIXING77. If you wouldn't mind rating and or reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you grab your podcast from, we'd appreciate that as well. Even better, if you enjoy this show, please tell your friends about it. Please join us again next week as we track down all the latest news on China EVs and more.